Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kayleigh Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur podcast. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about something that sits right at the center of sales, but often gets misunderstood or oversimplified. And that's trust. Because what I see so often in female entrepreneurs who are visible is that they're showing up consistently, they're creating the content, sharing the value, building an audience. And yet when it comes to sales, things don't quite translate at the level that they expect. They're not getting the sales they want. People are watching, right? They're engaging, they're replying, they're consuming, but they're not always moving. And that gap can feel confusing, especially when you're doing everything that you've been told you should to build trust. So instead of looking at this from the surface level, I want to slow this down a little bit and explore what trust actually is in the context of your business, how it's built over time, and why it's not always directly linked to how visible you are. Because trust is something your audience experiences gradually, often without realizing it, through a way that you show up, the way you think, and the way your work feels over time. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about visibility. Now, visibility is often treated as the main solution when sales feel slow. The assumption is that more eyes will naturally lead to more buyers. And whilst visibility does matter, it only creates the opportunity for trust to begin. It doesn't actually complete the process. Now, you could be highly visible and still feel like your audience is sitting on the edge rather than actually stepping forwards and choosing to buy from you. And that usually isn't because they're not interested. It's because that they're not actually certain. And certainty, as I'm sure you know, doesn't come from seeing more content. It actually comes from feeling settled in what they're seeing. If your message shifts depending on the day, or if your tone changes depending on how you're feeling, or even if your offers are not consistently present in your world, then your audience is constantly recalibrating their understanding of you. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means that trust is taking longer to build. So one way to look at your visibility this week is not just in terms of how often you're showing up, but how steady your presence feels when someone encounters you. If someone came across your last 10 pieces of content, for example, would they feel like they were meeting the same person every single time? Or would they feel kind of subtle shifts in how you position yourself? And that steadiness is what will allow the trust to deepen over time. So I want to talk now about messaging. Now, there is a difference between content that is helpful and content that creates movement or creates activation. Helpful content explains, right? And I'm sure all of us have created helpful content before. It teaches, it shares the information, and it absolutely has a place in your business. But on its own, it often keeps people in a state of understanding rather than action. What begins to move people is depth. So depth comes from speaking to what someone is really experiencing, not just what they are doing. It comes from articulating thoughts they haven't quite put into words themselves. It comes from showing them that you understand not just the surface of their situation, but the nuisance underneath it. When someone feels that level of understanding, something will shift internally within them, and they begin to trust that you see them properly. And when they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel safe, they feel understood, the decision to move forwards becomes so much easier. And I can absolutely vouch for this because in all of my own previous investments, whether I've bought programs, whether I have invested one-to-one in mentorship and masterminds, I absolutely have felt seen, safe, heard, and understood. I think that's a really, really important factor. So if you reflect on your own messaging, are you explaining what you do, or are you exploring how your audience actually feels in the moment they're navigating? Are you sharing the conclusions, or are you allowing people to see how you think? And that's the key thing. Now, a useful way to deepen this is to take one topic you often speak about and stay with it longer than you normally would, right? So instead of summarizing it, expand on it, explore the layers and speak to the contradictions within it. Let your audience sit in your thinking rather than just receiving the outcome of it. And this is where the trust begins to really feel real. And it really will help you with your messaging and support you with activating your audience. Now, trust is closely linked to safety, and I've already mentioned safety. Even if we don't always think about it in that way, it really does link. So when someone is considering investing in you, they're not just evaluating your knowledge or your offer. They are assessing whether they feel safe stepping into your world. Safe to be seen, safe to be guided, safe to trust your process, because obviously everything that you do will be different to what everyone else does in your industry. And that sense of safety is built through consistency of identity. So if your beliefs feel really, really clear and your standards, they're really stable and they can see those, and if your presence feels grounded, your audience begin to relax within your leadership and they don't feel like they need to constantly reassess whether you are the right fit. But if your identity starts to kind of feel or be represented a little bit all over the place and your messaging is shifting every day, your positioning, you're changing your positioning statement every single week, then there's going to be that subtle hesitation, right? They're not necessarily going to be able to feel safe with you. And it's not always conscious. It's often just a feeling that something hasn't quite, I'm going to say, sort of settled yet in their mind. So it can be powerful to ask yourself, if someone followed you closely for the next month, would they experience consistency in how you think, how you lead, and how you hold your work? And if not, where does that shift actually come from? So that's a really, really good exercise to do. So I invite you to absolutely go away and do that. Because identity consistency, it doesn't mean you need to be really rigid with this. It means the clarity, right? That it's strong enough to hold even as your business evolves. And that's the important thing here. Now, I want to talk about why people stay in your world but don't move. And this is one of the most important parts of this conversation. When people stay in your world but don't buy, it's easy to assume they're not ready, or that they need more time, or that they're simply observing. And sometimes that is true. But often what's happening is that something is missing in the transition from interest to decision. They may understand what you do, but they're not fully seeing themselves inside of it. They may resonate with a piece of content that you're putting out, but not feel that urgency to move today. They may like you, but not feel certain enough to commit. Now, that gap is rarely closed by more content alone. It's closed by that clarity and that repetition, okay? So clarity in how you position your offer, clarity in who you are as an individual, as a leader, clarity in the transformation that it actually creates, and repeating it, repetition in allowing people to actually hear that message enough times for it to really settle in their minds and for it to really sink in, for them to really understand that that is your message. Now, if your offers are only visible occasionally, or if you assume people already know how to work with you, you're creating uncertainty, okay? And you're creating an opportunity for people to question who you are and actually what you're offering. So a practical place to look at this is, how often are you clearly showing your audience how they can move forwards with you in a way that feels integrated in your presence? Because people will rarely move on the first piece of content that they see, right? They're going to move when it's familiar. They're going to move when they actually have or see that clarity. They're going to move when they really do feel safe, seen, heard, and understood. Now, trust is not something that you can rush. And I think this is the thing as well. A lot of people think that you can just build trust over a couple of days and everyone's going to buy. It's not going to happen, right? You can't rush it. It's going to be built over time. But if you're changing things significantly in your message, etc., you're going to reset the process. You're not going to allow people to build that trust, that clarity over time with you. And that doesn't mean that you can't evolve. It simply means that evolution needs to feel anchored rather than reactive. So if you want to build trust that converts consistently, the focus becomes less about doing more and more about holding your work more steadily, staying with your message long enough for it to actually land. And when I'm saying long enough, honestly give it time, right? Don't just think a couple of days or I'm going to give it a week and see. I always say to my clients, like, give anything 28 days to at least test. Okay. So messaging long enough to land, 28 days at least, but it's going to take a lot longer than that to build it up over time. Continuing to speak even when your results are not immediate, right? So continue to share your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, your opinions, even if results are not coming in, even if people are not buying, even if people are not interacting straight away. Keep going. They've got to hear it. They've got to see that repetition. Allowing your audience to see the same level of clarity over time as well. Giving them the opportunity to get to know you and to really understand and to see what you are all about and how you can support them and help them. You might reflect on this by asking, where am I interrupting my own momentum? And I think that's quite an important question to ask yourself, right? Where do I step back when things feel a little bit quiet or, where I'm a little bit nervous about things because no one's buying? Where do I change direction before something has the time to actually work? Where do I lose conviction when the results are delayed? I think these are all really important questions to ask yourself because I think it's so easy to pull back from our focus when things aren't quite working. So it's a really important thing to do, or this is a great exercise to do, is just ask yourself these questions. And remember, be consistent, stick at it long enough, do a 28-day test. And then from there, you adapt and then you continue testing. You continue giving your message or sharing your message and really owning your positioning. Now, when you bring all of this together, trust starts to look very different from how it's often described. And it's not just about showing up, right? It's about how you show up as that leader, that iconic leader. It's about being understood by your audience. It's about allowing your audience to experience your thinking over time. And again, the key words there are over time, right? Not overnight, over time. And when that experience feels really steady, really clear, really grounded, things will honestly start to shift. Okay, I know that's a bit of a phrase at the moment and a buzzword, but things will start to shift, right? The hesitation from your ideal clients and audience will reduce and the decisions will feel easier, right? The movements will happen. People will choose to buy with you, but you've got to give it that time and you've got to really focus on your positioning, on your identity and how you're sharing that. You've got to really focus on your messaging and really lean into that. How are you making people feel safe? So if sales currently feel slower than you expected, it doesn't mean something is missing. It usually means something needs to be held more consistently. Now, if this conversation resonated and you're ready to operate at a different level for the rest of this year, then this is exactly the work that we go deeper into inside Unstoppable and Iconic the Mastermind, my two signature programs within the Iconic Era movement. And if you're not sure which space is right for you, or you simply just want to explore what stepping into this next level could look like, then drop me a DM on Instagram or on any socials with the word Iconic and let's have a conversation. I always prefer to have a good chat with people so we can obviously explore what is right for you. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast, and I will see you all again next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur Podcast with me, your host, Kayleigh Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow and scale your dream six-figure or multi-six-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.